I've been asked to comment on the claim that an unreacted thermite material was found in the debris of the World Trade Center buildings. In particular, I've been asked to address this paper, which was published in the Open Chemical Physics Journal. The paper concludes with this statement. Based on these observations, we conclude that the red layer of the red-grey chips we discovered in the World Trade Center dust is active, unreacted, thermitic material, incorporating nanotechnology, and is a highly energetic pyrotechnic or explosive material. In order to understand the significance of what this paper is saying, I'll give a brief summary of thermite and thermate. Thermite is a mixture of powdered aluminium and some form of metal oxide, usually iron oxide, although it can be made with other metallic oxides, including, for example, copper. When these two materials react, the result is a formation of iron and aluminium oxide and a great deal of heat. In short, it is a highly exothermic reaction. Also, because the oxygen necessary for the process comes from the metal oxide, thermite compounds do not require atmospheric oxygen, and so are ideal for use in, amongst other things, underwater incendiary devices. However, thermite can be somewhat troublesome to ignite, and the subsequent reaction is violent and unpredictable. These factors, as well as the difficulty of applying it to the surface of a structure in a satisfactory manner, mean that it is not suitable for controlled demolition. As far as I'm aware, thermite has never been used in a controlled demolition ever. Thermate is a variety of thermite, with the addition of small quantities of other substances, such as sulfur. These additional elements have the effect of increasing the heat output and also lowering the ignition point. Nanothermate is the same as thermate, but the particles are smaller. It has been suggested that this form of thermate can be contained in a gel and be formed or shaped in such a way that it could be used in a controlled demolition. That said, I am not aware of any thermatic material ever having been used in a controlled demolition. Back to the paper. Before going into detail of the paper, it's necessary to look at the authors and where the paper was published. In relation to the authors, you can easily do the research yourself. I'll mention just a few. Stephen Jones is a well-known 9/11 conspiracy theorist who has been publishing papers on the subject for 5 years or more. He also gives many lectures on the subject. Niels H. Harriott has a similar pedigree. Greg Roberts gave his address as Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, a collection of 1,000 or so people from across the world who have joined together to encourage further investigations into 9/11 due to their belief that the original investigations were, in effect, a cover-up. One gives their address as International Center for 9/11 Studies. The website for that organization is somewhat lacking in detail, so I used the Contact Us function, and I did get a response. I'll come back to that later. Bearing in mind that the conclusion that they reach in this paper basically uncovers one of the greatest conspiracies the world has ever known, where do they go in order to publicize their findings? The Open Chemical Physics Journal. This, it has to be said, is an interesting choice. And by interesting, I mean not only are the contents of the paper not appropriate for a journal purporting to cover that topic, but I also mean it in a totally and deliberately sarcastic way. The journal is nothing short of a joke. Despite having an editorial board of 90 or so people from throughout the world, in 2009, the journal published 4 papers. To give you some idea of how staggering this is, YouTube user Thunderfoot has published, on average, 4 papers a year. But perhaps what is more interesting is the account given by Philip Davies, a graduate student of Cornell University. This article appeared in the New Scientist in September of last year. I'll pick it up at the beginning of the second paragraph. Earlier this year, Davies started receiving unsolicited emails from Bentham Science Publishers, which publishes more than 200 open-access journals, which turn the conventional business model of academic publishing on its head by charging publication fees to the authors of research papers and then making the content available for free. As the emails stacked up, Davies was not only encouraged to submit papers, but was also invited to serve on the editorial board of some of Bentham's journals, for which he was told he'd be allowed to publish 1 free article each year. I received solicitations for journals for which I had no subject expertise at all, says Davies. It really painted a picture of vanity publishing. So Davis teamed up with Kent Anderson, a member of the publishing team at the New England Journal of Medicine, to put Bentham's editorial standards to the test. The pair turned to SCI Gen, a program that generates nonsensical computer science papers, and submitted the resulting paper to the Open Information Science Journal, published by Bentham. The paper, entitled Deconstructing Access Points, made no sense whatsoever, as this sample reveals. In this section, we discuss existing research into black-red trees, vacuum tubes, and courseware. On a similar note, recent work by Takahashi suggests a methodology for providing robust modulates, but does not offer an implementation. Davis and Anderson, writing under the nom de plume David Phillips and Andrew Kent, also dropped a hefty hint of the hoax by giving their institutional affiliation as a Centre for Research in Applied Phonology, or CRAP. Yet 4 months after the article was submitted, David Phillips received an email from Sana Mokharam, Bentham's assistant manager of publishing. This is to inform you that your submitted article has been accepted for publication after peer reviewing process, the name of the publication. I would be highly grateful to you if you could please fill and sign the attached fee form and covering letter and send them back to me via email as soon as possible to avoid further delay in publication. The publication fee was $800 to be sent to a PO box in the United Arab Emirates. Having made his point, Davis withdrew the paper. I failed to mention earlier that Kevin Ryan and Frank Legg are joint editors, along with Stephen Jones, of the Journal for 9/11 Studies. So far, we have a collection of authors who appear to have a bias. Allegations of bias are something that Stephen Jones is familiar with. In his paper, Why Indeed Did the WT